Fam. Welcome back to another episode of Hard as a Mother. And if you saw my story today, I was talking a lot about Hello Kitty. And then Har walks into the studio wearing her Hello Kitty shirt.
AJ also said that his niece would really like it. And I asked him how old she was. And he said 4.
Yeah. And we're well into our 30s now. But I mean, and I'm wearing my Hello Kitty shoes today. So it just goes to show you can rock Hello Kitty at any age. So yeah, if you're new if you're new here, thank you so much for joining us. And if you're joining us again, thank you for being a loyal Ham Fam follower. And don't forget, we're also on Facebook now. So don't forget to like our page and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our awesome episodes.
Exactly. So, again, like Giselle said, if you guys are new here, my name is Harleen, aka Har, and this is Jizzy, the hostess with the mostest.
Aka Big J.
Big J. If you guys haven't seen our Meet the Mamas episode,
God, my friends in Vancouver are calling me Big J now.
So we are just 2 moms on a mission to create a safe space for moms and dads to tackle on, real topics of parenthood in an honest and real way. And also while we're trying, laughing at ourselves, because parenting is hard and we just have to laugh at everything that we do wrong, everything we do right, just anything in between. That's the only way. Like,
shit is hard. You got to keep it lighthearted, right? So, and we also have awesome guests every week, and today is no different. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a badass mompreneur and a travel blogger. She has a blog called How to Travel with Kids. And of course, right now with COVID, I mean, there's not much you can do there, but she will have some great tips for you guys for when, restrictions are lifted, because I know everyone's going to want to hop on a plane because this shit is it's bullshit right now.
I'm so ready to get on a plane.
Me too.
Closed border or not, you'll see me like those people like trying to like go through the borders and you're not allowed and you get like detained.
Just running.
Yeah.
Okay. You just incriminated yourself.
That's true. Oh my God.
So our guest today is the lovely Jax Perrin, and she's joining us straight out of Darwin, Australia. Hi, Jax.
Hi, Jax.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today. We know that the time zone is like not ideal for us or for you.
Yeah, it's super challenging. So again, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. Now that you are living in Australia, you are originally from Darwin, but we're living in Calgary. What made you decide to uproot your newborn baby, your partner, your whole entire life from Calgary and move to Australia?
Yeah, we actually had a bit of a unique situation in that I was freelancing at the time, just kind of doing some part-time work here and there as it came through. And that was totally remote, even though it was with clients in Calgary. And Jesse's job was, he was basically able to go on to parental payment because I wasn't eligible with my 2-year Canadian visa. So with that income, we probably wouldn't honestly have been able to stay in our inner city apartment and living there and everything. So we decided, why not take Aurora to meet, my side of the family, let Jessie explore Australia. We can see where that takes us. And we just wanted to kind of get out while we had an opportunity and just the opportunity really.
Yeah. So can I just say too that most women, once they have a baby, it's kind of like, okay, our life changes, but you didn't want to change anything about your life. And you decided, okay, I'm going to have this baby, but I'm going to keep traveling. I'm going to keep working freelance. And so like, is that something you decided when you found out you're pregnant? You're just like, yeah, no way. I'm going to change everything. I like everything. And we're just going to have to make it work.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of been our big philosophy. Aurora was definitely a happy surprise for us. So we were intending, we had a lot of travel plans anyway, into 2020 and onwards. So when we found out that we were having her, we were like, what are we going to do? And we were like, we have to just keep going with that. We had a few people, talking to us about how we're not going to be able to do that, or we can say goodbye to travel, or travel just won't be the same, or, don't travel from this age to this age. You can only travel after this time, or only this type of travel. And we just decided that that's not what we wanted. We didn't want to confine ourselves to exactly what we thought she wanted at that time when she was only a newborn. And, really all she needs is us and to be fed and clean and whatnot. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, we just decided that was the way to go.
Yeah. So I just want to say that you are literally living the dream. Like people wish to travel and work. If I could bring my laptop wherever I can go, you are living the dream of people who, and maybe that's why people like hinder or deter you from doing that, because they're just like, there's no way that you can do it, but you guys are literally doing it.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate. I think it kind of just led to this like naturally. It was a very organic kind of situation to get ourselves into. We just had the skills, and where we didn't have the skills, we decided to learn the skills and just start reaching out to people to be able to, kind of make this a reality. And there were definitely some people who, are in a more traditional lifestyle, who have kids as well, that were a little concerned about how we were going to be able to do that, if we were going to be able to do that, if it was a good idea or not. But we just decided to give it a go, see where it took us. And if we didn't like it, we can always come back and do things like that. But I mean, so far it's working. So I hope that we can continue.
Well, good on you guys for proving everybody wrong. I just want to say too, and I want to get Har's input on this, is when Ava was born, my daughter Ava, my family was telling me that you're not allowed to leave the country until your baby's baptized. So first of all, did you hear that? Do you know about that? Yeah.
No.
Or you're not allowed to travel until your baby's baptized. So first of all, what if you don't even want to baptize your child is the first thing. And second, like, what does that mean? Like, how is it going to affect you? So actually, Ava's first trip was to Hawaii when she was 5 months old, and she wasn't baptized, but we had to go to the church and get a special blessing from the priest for her to leave the country. And I was like,
wow.
All right, well, at the time I was only doing it just to get my parents and Marcus' parents off my back, but that's what we had to do.
Oh, because it was coming from your parents?
Mostly Mark's side, but yeah, and my grandma too. She's like, you should get a special blessing from the priest before you leave. I'm like, okay.
That is super interesting. So I got a lot of slack because my son is actually not baptized. I grew up a Catholic, but my son's father is not. He's a different religion, and we butted heads with a lot of the times. But we've come to a good compromise. My son's actually not baptized because I'm going to allow him to explore that on his own,
right,
if he wants to. But he does go to Catholic school, but he does go to his dad's church. And I said, hey, buddy, whatever you want. It's just funny because my mom's like, just baptize him, just do it behind BJ's back. And I was like, Mom, you can't, that's so rude. Like, you can't do that. Like, it's just, it's dishonest. And like, it's a conversation to be had. It was just funny because she was like, just do it. But Jaden was also a baby. I took him on the plane. His first trip was when we went to Boston, and I think he was 5 months old. Yeah.
So how, like, that just goes to show then, like, with Filipino logic, there really is no logic. Like, what is it going to do if your baby leaves the country before they're baptized? But people were actually saying stuff to you, like, logistically, how are you going to do it, right?
What concerns did they have that they brought to you why you shouldn't be taking Aurora to another side of the country or the other side of the world?
What was their logic?
I think they were just concerned. I think partly there was probably people who didn't want us to leave because, that means that we've just had this new baby and now we're like going to the other side of the world. You don't know when we're going to see her again. And obviously now it's, going to be a lot longer than we initially anticipated. I think there wasn't a whole lot of concern about us going to Australia, but when we then decided to go to Thailand when she was still quite young, some people were concerned about that. But I think in Canada, Thailand is viewed how like Australia views like Mexico or something. Like,
yes,
for you guys, Mexico is like quite a common destination. It's not seen as super dangerous or anything like that. But Thailand's a little bit more unknown because it's the other side of the world. But to Australia, I think just the way the media portrays it and society in general and social media and whatever, Thailand seems like very casual and calm, and it's kind of similar for us. So I think people were just kind of concerned about that, not knowing. I think it's just an education thing, not knowing what is out there and what might be safe or unsafe. And just, obviously at the moment in Canada and in Australia, it's very common for kids to grow up in the one household with, their sleep routine and their daily routines. And, maybe they go to the park, but most of their time is spent increasingly as kind of technology becomes more and more prevalent in society. It's like spent, in front of the TV or on the iPad or just like indoors in general, rather than like running around outside or exploring new places or traveling. We're just very in one place compared to how sometimes like other parts of the world are, or even how we used to be. So I think their main concern was just like something different and not knowing how that would pan out and if it would be okay. And, just not knowing really is what I think they were concerned about.
And it's just funny because that just shows that you have to do your own research, and it's not just by, it's great. You want to get other people's opinions, but I do believe that you have to do your own research to form your own opinion on certain things, because people will jump your throat sometimes when they hear it through the telephone line, but they don't do the research on specific things. For instance, I actually wanted to go to Thailand in my 20s. I watched this movie called Broken Down Palace, and if anybody has not watched it, it's like two American girls going to Thailand, and I was going to go with a girlfriend. They actually got imprisoned because somebody planted drugs, and that's like a big no-no in Thailand, and they ended up in jail. And at the minute that I saw that, I was like, I am not going to Thailand.
Yeah, because I could see you getting in prison.
And the thing is, I was naive back then, and I was like, I'm not going. So I haven't been to Thailand ever, and that hindered me for a long time. And I think now, because I'm a little bit older and I'm a little bit wiser sometimes, not always the most responsible, but like I was saying, is that you have to do your research, be informed before you can make or judge or make any type of opinion or say something. Yeah, so I want to backtrack just a little bit. So while you were in Calgary, you were pregnant, and you had decided you and Jessie were going to go to Australia, but you guys were in the process of moving, and you just had a new baby. Like, tell me what kind of stress you were under when it was time to move. Like, you weren't moving to just a different house. You were moving on the other side of the world. How did you prepare for this move? And were you you were probably more stressed. Like, how did you prepare for this move?
Yeah, honestly, we didn't really prepare, which was not the best approach. We kind of just put it off until the last minute, and then it was all very chaotic. With Aurora, the most difficult thing was honestly just getting her to sit up as a 3-week-old to get her passport photos. That was the most difficult thing that we had to deal with her. But other than that, I think we were just trying to sell all of our furniture, all of our belongings, get rid of everything that we possibly could, and then going through everything else and keeping, the important stuff, or we have like our winter jackets and boots and things like that are in Canada, but we obviously don't need them here. So things like that, we obviously needed to keep. And so we were carting them to Jessie's mum's place to store them. But everything else, we were just trying to get rid of everything. And we had to find someone to lease our apartment and things like that. So it was just very frantic at the end. And, it's winter and it was snowing, and I can't help Jessie move any of the furniture because I've just had a baby. And the baby's crying, and I'm trying to hold the door open for him so he can move everything out. I videoed the whole experience, and it was very frantic at the time. Looking back now, it kind of seems like, oh, that was funny and chaotic. But I remember at the time it was quite stressful. I wasn't really at all concerned about the flight or getting to Australia or once we were there, because we knew we were just staying with my parents for the first little while we figured out what we wanted to do. So it was more just getting everything organized and getting out of our apartment on time and packing our bags. I was frantically packing our bags and stuffing them full 10 minutes before we had to leave to go to the airport, because we had so much that we ended up bringing. And now looking at how much we brought, we just like, we absolutely don't need that much, but we have it here now. So yeah, it was stressful, but I'm glad we did it. And now it's just kind of funny to look back on.
Yeah. So how old was Aurora during all of this?
When we actually moved, she was 5 weeks old when we were I think she turned 6 weeks old while we were in transit. So 5 weeks old on her first plane, and then 6 weeks old by the time we got to Australia. And then obviously while we were moving and everything, like we didn't really start doing anything honestly until she was like 3.5 weeks old. So
wow.
Yeah, about that.
So you were 6 weeks postpartum when this happened, and most women at 6 weeks postpartum are still trying to adjust to motherhood and learn how to live life properly and honestly take that first poop. Like that's the scariest thing. But you had a whole other set of stressors, like a whole different set of stressors, good ones though, because now you guys are where you are now.
Yeah, it was definitely, I don't know if I would do it again. I think I would probably recommend to anyone else to give yourself that 6 weeks, because I really didn't. And I just tried to jump back into everything. And I've listened so many times. I did so much research on postpartum. I listened so many times to people say, oh, just relax and take the first 6 weeks easy and just, just survive and whatever. And I was like, no, I'm young and I'm fun and I'm just going to get back out there and get back into life. And I was, going out all day with the baby, and we were doing things like I think we went out for the first time like 4 days after she was born, and I was just like out and about and doing all this stuff. And at the time I was like, yeah, this is great. And then I got to about 3 months postpartum and I was like, oh my God, that was insane. Why did I do that? And next time I just need to listen to when people say, give yourself a break, and to actually just give myself a break. So it was crazy, but it was, I probably wouldn't do it again.
I don't think I could do what you did. Like, honestly, that is super commendable. So obviously in Canada, or when you have a newborn, you obviously have different checkups and vaccinations. Were you able to do that in Australia? And how did you prepare to ensure that Aurora had her medical needs met in a different country?
Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, and I may be a little uneducated on that side of things, but I think that Australia is a bit more relaxed than Canada is about like checkups and things like that. She had her like first vaccinations when we were here, and they were just a little bit delayed, which, a lot of people just, for whatever reason can't do that for travel and things like that. So she was, we have we almost have free healthcare in Australia. They say it's free, but it's like kind of fake free. But if you go to certain doctors, it is
fake free?
It's like they say it's free healthcare, but if you don't go to the right kind of doctor, you still have to pay $70 to go to the doctor. So if you go to your family doctor, you have to pay. But if you go to like a walk-in clinic, you don't have to pay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And also sometimes they choose. So like if you're a student or you're a young parent or things like that, they'll give it to you for free. But if you're just like a regular working professional who's a bit older, then they might make you pay. And they can kind of pick and choose, so it's a little dodgy on that side of things. But we just went with Aurora. I think we paid for her first set of vaccinations, and that was like $100 or something like that. But the visit, I think they were nicer and they marked it down as like a postpartum checkup rather than her checkup.
Yeah.
And then we were traveling in Thailand, but she didn't need any until we were back here. And now she is actually a dual citizen. So it's a lot easier for her. She's under healthcare under me. So everything is kind of covered now in the vaccination realm. But we didn't get any checkups. We didn't really, she was fine. And I think that sometimes a lot of checkups, the same in pregnancy, if you have like a lot of checkups, you can actually just get really stressed because you're like, oh my God, are they in the right percentile? Oh, they're a little bit shorter. Like, are they going to be okay? When really I could see that she was growing. I could see that she was eating. I could see that she was developing and whatnot. We went and got her checked when I think she was like 10 months or 8 months or something like that. And they were like, yeah, she's in the 97th percentile for weight. And I was like, okay, good. So she's very healthy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But she didn't have any signs of anything. So, we were quite relaxed about it. A lot of cultures around the world don't do regular checkups all the time. So, yeah.
That's a really good mindset because you're right. Like now that you say it, a lot of that stuff is just unnecessary stress. Of course, it's good to be on the safe side for sure. But I mean, you're her mom, you know her best. And you did mention that you did research on postpartum and all that and what's going to happen after the baby's born. So my question is, like, did you feel any postpartum depression, like anything that you researched? Like, were you expecting it? And what kind of things did you feel? Like, did you wish that you like, were you sitting on the plane like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm feeling kind of depressed right now or whatever. Like, did any of those feelings ever come up?
Yes and no. I wouldn't say I had like postpartum depression. I definitely started experiencing like anxiety, which I've never had in my life. I didn't understand it at all. I couldn't like empathize or anything. Like I'd never been an anxious type person. But I think that's just kind of something that's naturally going to occur when you now suddenly have something that's very important that you have to look after for someone. I think directly, like immediately postpartum, I was pretty fine. I was obviously like a little tired and it was ups and downs and whatnot, but Aurora was a very easy baby until about the 4-month sleep regression. So I think 3 months, 5 months, and 8 months were all really, really hard for different reasons. And so that was really, really difficult for me. I think that, just trying to like be open and communicate with Jesse has really helped. And he's been really helpful in reassuring me that, we're doing the right thing and she's okay and I'm okay and everyone is healthy, everyone's safe. And that's kind of like the most important thing, and just keeping that perspective. But I definitely had some, like you have ups and downs. I take what, there's this mum that I follow on social media and it's Hey Shayla. She's from Minnesota and she says all the time that we have bad moments, not bad days. So she tries not to let the bad times like be like, oh, today is a total write-off and today was awful, when really it's just like a portion of today, especially with kids. Like they're so up and down throughout the day, and especially now having a toddler as well. She could have a total meltdown and then the next second she's like totally fine, like nothing even happened. So it's just like about keeping the moments and trying to not let that get super overwhelming and just be like, it's okay, it's just right now and things are going to be all right. But I don't think I necessarily like experienced any postpartum depression specifically, but definitely a little more anxiety than I have ever really had to deal with.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of resources, like I know that Jessie was there, did you reach out to other moms that you know of, or is there resources out in Australia if you needed help or just to talk to somebody about it?
Yeah, it was really hard because none of my friends have kids. Like they're all, just like they've just finished their uni degrees, which is what I probably would have been doing had I not dropped out and started traveling and then met Jessie. So, they be as supportive as they can be, but obviously they're not going through the same situation. They're not up at 3 a.m. with a screaming baby. They're just not dealing with the same issues. So something that was really helpful was the fact that we're now in Australia. So when I'm awake in the middle of the night, everyone in Canada is awake,
yes,
which is good. Or also when I was in Canada, people in Australia were awake, so that's helpful. Also, I think I've had a lot of support from my mum, just being like, I see you, I see that you're going through this. It's really hard, but you can do it. I did know a couple of people who had kids that were kind of like acquaintances, and now we're kind of, better friends because of that, because I would just reach out to them and be like, this is what's happening. And they're like, yes, that is what's happening. And we went through that as well, blah, blah, blah. Just hearing that's something that other people have gone through. I did also obviously just like do a crazy amount of Googling and following a lot of other mums who are quite realistic on social media, but still like positive. So they'll tell you how they're dealing, like what they're dealing with, and they're not going to pretend like everything's perfect, but keep it in a positive light and trying to like help you just feel like you're not by yourself and you're not the only one there. Because when you're the only person I'm the only person in my entire high school grade of 100 and nearly 90 people, all girls, that has a baby or is even pregnant, as far as I know. And even now with a 1-year-old, I don't even know of anyone else who's even pregnant. So like no one from my school, no one from my uni, like no one I know is pregnant or has kids. Just like luckily some of Jessie's friends do have kids. So like that's been helpful. But yeah, mostly just been, talking to my mum, researching online, and then reaching out to a few other people here and there to try and kind of make sure that I'm not just crazy and that it is something that's very common.
So I have a question for you, Jax, and also for Giselle. We obviously have grown up with friends, close friends. Do you both feel that your friends eventually will change because you can relate more to other people that are sharing the same experience as you? Or do you think your bond with your longtime friends are still going to be tight? Or do you think that your bond will be a lot stronger with other people who are relatable, who are other moms?
I think both. I think that as I get older and as I move into like a new chapter in my life, I definitely, the relationships that I have change. And I think instead of having, that core group of 2 or 3 people that I rely on heavily for every part of my life, I now am diversifying. So I have, people that I speak to about mum things, and I have people that I speak to about travel, and I have people that I speak to about this and that and whatever else. So I think I will still have that relationship with, my uni friends and my school friends that will always be there. And, eventually they're going to get into that phase of their life as well. And then I know I'm going to be like, oh, it must be so hard having a newborn. That was like years ago for me. It's all done. But I think as well, like I think there's both. I think that different people bring out different parts of your personality. So I think that having both is important, because if you just have people that are mum friends, then you don't ever, I think you find that if I'm talking to someone else who has kids, all we do is talk about both of our kids. But if I'm talking to my other friends, they can talk about, their crazy date that they went on, or the travel that they're going to go do, or their job, or whatever else is going on in their life. So it kind of helped me to step back and remember that I was Jax before I was mum.
Yeah.
And I think so. I think it's important to have both. I think that, yeah, like while the relationship has changed, I don't think that it will go away. At least I hope not. And they're going to move into that stage of their life eventually. Yeah. So, yeah.
And I totally agree with you. And that's a good point too, is that, it's good to have both. And it's funny that you asked that, because one of my best friends just got pregnant. And like you, I had kids at a time where nobody was having kids, in my group of friends at least. And for me, it was a very lonely time. I always talk about it in our previous episodes, but like it was just lonely because I didn't have any, like none of my closest friends were in the same boat, and they were still partying and drinking and stuff. And I had major FOMO. And the only thing I wanted to do, I was like, I swear to God, when I'm done breastfeeding, I'm going to do this and this and this. But recently, when one of my best friends got pregnant, I'm always checking up on her, and I'm always like, are you good? Do you need anything? What are you craving? I'll send it to you. I like sent her pizza one time because she said she was craving carby cheese. But, and then I'm like, I hope I'm not bothering you when I check up on you. And she's like, no, I love it. Like, I feel really loved and cared for. Thank you for checking up on me. And I said, I made myself a promise that I would check up on my pregnant friends, because I didn't get that same thing when I was pregnant, because nobody knew what I was going through. And that's nobody's fault, obviously. But, and then she's like, well, now I feel bad because I never did that for you. And I was like, honestly, how would you know? Right. And I knew, and just like you, Jax, I knew that eventually they were going to reach that point in their life, and I wanted to be there for them. And now our relationship has, I think, strengthened too, because now we're both moms. So, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, fast forward, obviously, Aurora's now, like, she's going into her toddler. Well, how old are toddlers? Like 1 and up?
1 to like 4, I think.
So I know that you and Jessie had your own travel company, right?
Yeah.
So I know that obviously COVID had impacted a lot of travel agencies. I know that I was watching your story because I follow you. You guys were actually in Thailand when COVID hit.
Yep, that's right.
So when I was watching your stories, there was you guys documented all the hardships and struggles while you're trying to get back to Australia. What was it like going through COVID, being stuck in like Thailand where you have no idea how severe COVID was going to be with a baby? Like, how long did it take you guys back to get to Australia, and what did you guys do to get home?
Yeah, I mean, it was all it all happened so fast. We were in Chiang Mai and we were house sitting for this Australian family, actually. They had lived in Thailand for like 14 years or something. So they were basically Thai locals, but they were visiting home at the time, like their family back in Australia. We were meant to be there for about 5 weeks, and then we were going to be staying for longer to go for Songkran, which Jessie had been wanting to go to for like 8 years. We've been dreaming about it, and finally we were going to do it this year. And he was so excited about it. We were going to be in the right place, the right time, and it was going to be great. And then COVID started coming around. Songkran got cancelled, and we were like, what are we going to do? So we called the Australian family. We said, are you guys coming back? Are you staying there? They're like, oh, no, we're just going to continue on with our holiday. Like, all good. We'll come back when we're, when we're done, just as normal. And we're like, oh, okay. And then we watched the Australian Prime Minister address Australians and say, if you don't come home, we're not going to help you come home. So you need to come home now. And we're like, oh, okay. Like, this is serious. We need to kind of get out of here because we don't have any stability here. We don't have any support systems. And if we get stuck in Thailand, we're not going to be able to see my family or Jessie's family. And we're just going to be by ourselves, and it's going to be really hard. We don't have a stable accommodation. We don't know what it's going to do. So we called my parents and we decided that we were just going to fly to where they were, and they had moved in that time to Darwin, which is where we are now. So I had been to Darwin once, years ago, for a couple of weeks just on a work trip. Jessie had never been to Darwin. And we were like, okay, well, I guess we'll just fly to Darwin. We'll figure it out. It's fine. We need to self-isolate when we get there. And as we were flying from Chiang Mai into Singapore, and then we were supposed to fly Singapore to Bali and then Bali to Darwin. Bali turned into this crazy shit show, and all flights got cancelled into Denpasar. So we were like, okay, now I guess we're going from Singapore straight to Darwin, which is kind of better because, it was a little stressful at the time. It was before masks were a thing. You were told don't wear a mask because you're taking them from healthcare workers and whatnot. So it was before all of that. Because I guess this is March 20th or March 21st. It was just the week that it got declared a pandemic. And, it was before it was before everything turned into how it is now. And, we went to Singapore, and as we got to Singapore, Australia changed the rules and said, so I think it was the Friday at midnight. If you went in the country by Friday at midnight, and you weren't a citizen, you weren't supposed to be allowed in, except for immediate family members. So Jessie and Aurora are immediate family members. So we were like, okay, it should be fine. But Jessie and I were just de facto, or I guess, what is it? I can't remember what you guys call it in Canada. It's de facto.
Common law?
Yeah, common law. That's right. So we were just common law. We weren't engaged or married or anything like that. And in Australia, you have to register your relationship. So we were at the airport, and Jetstar, which was the airline we were flying with, wouldn't let us board our flight because they said, you're not going to get in. And obviously, if they let us get on the flight, then they're responsible for taking us back to Singapore. Obviously, I would get through, but I'm not going to go through without Jessie and Aurora.
Right.
So first of all, it was that Jessie wasn't going to be allowed through. And then after, many, many hours, we talked to them, and then suddenly Aurora wasn't going to be allowed through. And we're like, that doesn't make any sense. So we're in the Singapore airport. Flights are getting cancelled left, right, and centre. We've just been told, keep your distance from people. Meanwhile, there's hundreds or thousands of people sleeping on the Singapore airport floor, including ourselves. We were in there for 32 hours in the Singapore airport, not including flight time and everything like that. And then eventually we got boarding passes for the next flight the next day. It took us 10 hours to even get some meal vouchers so we could like get food in the airport. And the hotels in the airport were all full and everything. And obviously we couldn't leave the airport because if you leave the airport, then you have to quarantine and all of that. So yeah, it was pretty hectic at the time and quite stressful. And I put everything that was happening on Instagram. I didn't like video it properly, but I just like had record of it just so I could see, because I like to do that with travel, things like that, because then you can look back and see like how crazy everything was.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was quite stressful. There was a lot of like heated discussions, but obviously like there wasn't that much they could do. And the policies were changing whilst we were in the airport. So eventually we had to register the relationship, and then they were like, oh, you'll have to wait up to 5 days for that to go through. And we're like, we can't sit in an airport for up to 5 days. No one's flying into Australia in the next, like after 3 days time or something. So we were like, we have to get on this flight. Otherwise we're going to be in Singapore, which is even worse than being in Thailand because it's like more expensive, and like it was just not going to be an option for us. So we were on the phone to my parents. We were like buying Skype credit to like call the Australian Immigration Department. We were just like on the phone the whole time. We didn't sleep all through the night. I was just holding Aurora because we didn't travel. We didn't own a pram or anything like that. We had a baby carrier, but yeah, it was pretty intense at the time. And also we cloth diaper. So we were like I was running out of diapers, and I was like, I need a washing machine. Like we don't have any disposables. Like I'm sure we could have probably bought some or gone to like one of the hotels and pleaded our case. But yeah, it was just a very stressful time. Eventually we made it into Darwin, and then we just did our self-isolation at my parents' place, and we were good to go. And thankfully Darwin has been very, they were very strict at the very beginning. And so we had about 60 days of lockdown at the very start. And since June, everything's been open as normal for us, which has been really nice.
So. Yeah, for sure.
So, Jax, tell me, while you were at the airport, what was like Aurora's demeanor? Like, did you have a hard time? Did she have a hard time, or was she just like a super happy baby? She's like, I don't really care, because it must have been really super uncomfortable for you and Jessie. You guys are laying on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, she was a pretty cruisy, adaptable baby. I was breastfeeding. Well, I am still breastfeeding, but I was exclusively breastfeeding. So that was basically how we dealt with it. I was just carrying her around a lot, walking around and whatnot. But she was only 4 or 5 months at the time, so she wasn't too active. She wasn't like crawling around or running around or anything like that, and she didn't need too much to be entertained. We did have like a handful of toys that we could like strap to the carrier and things like that. So mostly she was just in the carrier walking around, but she was definitely a little more stressed because we couldn't get her, like a dark space or anything like that. Actually, we went into the movie theater that's in the airport, because Singapore Airport has everything.
They have a movie theater in Singapore?
Yeah. No, I was going to say too that if you're going to get stuck at an airport, it's going to be Singapore. Like their airport is amazing. Like I've been there and it's so awesome. But like when you brought up the whole price thing, I'm like, yeah, I guess that is it's fucking so expensive in Singapore.
And that's probably, that's probably why, because they have basically everything that you need in that airport.
Yeah, no, definitely. They have like the Butterfly Museum, the theater, they have a gym and a pool and like all this stuff. Yeah. So yeah, we just tried to like go around and see different things. And we went on the train to the different terminal and then came back, and we actually walked around quite a bit. But so she didn't get like a full, really good night's sleep, but she wasn't, sleeping 12 hours at night or anything like that. So it wasn't a huge deal for her, and she was going to go through a time change anyway. So like we were really tired, and we took shifts where like Jessie would sleep on the floor for like a couple hours, and then I would walk her around for a bit. And then if she was going to nap, she would just nap with me, and I would just sit down somewhere. Or then like I would sleep and Jessie would take her for a walk. So yeah, it was pretty intense at the time. But she was pretty relaxed. She was definitely a little more irritable, probably just feeding off of our stress. And lack of sleep and everything like that. But all in all, it was relatively okay as far as like traveling with kids. If she was older, if she was the age she is now, I'm sure it would have been much more difficult. But it was okay. She was still like pretty young and cruisy at the time.
Mm-hmm. So for my daughter, we started sleep training at around 7 months. And although I always say it's the best thing I ever did, the one regret I always had was because she couldn't sleep on the go. Because she was trained to sleep in her crib and put herself to sleep in her crib. But when we were on the go, whenever we would travel, we always had to make sure, is the playpen going to fit in here? Because she doesn't sleep on the bed with us. And everything had always had to be catered to around to how she was going to sleep, because I was really anal about that and about, her sleep and her schedule or whatever, which I kind of regret. But so when you take Aurora to different places, do you guys research where you're going to stay and kind of make it more kid friendly, or does that not matter because you're going to make it work? And, all that travel that she's done since she was an infant has made her pretty easy to adapt.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely pros and cons to both sides of it. Like you said, like, if you do sleep training, then your kid goes to sleep and when they go to sleep, and it's really easy and it's really predictable for you. Because that's how it happens. It didn't work for us because even now, even if we're not necessarily traveling, but we want to go out at night, we take her with us, and she needs to be able to just fall asleep wherever we need her to fall asleep. Yeah. But the downside to that is when we're home and we're just kind of living that normal home lifestyle, she's not on like a strict schedule. We have a big bed and we just co-sleep with her. Even still, we just got a bigger bed like last week, which has been amazing because we were on this bed that just shouldn't be shared by 3 people, especially when one of them is like kicking and sleeping sideways and whatever. But yeah, no, it's been really beneficial for us. It wouldn't have worked otherwise if she needed to be in a crib or something like that, because we just didn't have one. We had a Snuggle Me when she was like under 5 months, so the whole time that we were in Thailand and just after we got to Australia as well, which is kind of like a little like nest thing that you can just put them in, and you can put that on the ground or wherever, and you just put like a blanket under it, and that was fine. And she slept really well in that, and I'm so glad that we got it. It was a lifesaver because it meant that we didn't have to carry her everywhere. But now, well, as she's getting older, we actually in the last month or so have had a bit more of a routine, just because that's just kind of how things have gone. We haven't been traveling as much and whatever. But yeah, I think for us, the negatives of not having a sleep schedule and of not doing sleep training, and therefore having to deal with her being up late or not sleeping as well or not sleeping through the night, the negatives of that don't outweigh the positives, because we are still able to travel to a new place or be in a different room or a different bed, or go out at night and she can just kind of fall asleep laying with me or sitting with Jessie. And yeah, so we kind of like weighed it up, and for us and for the lifestyle that we want to continue to live, not just live right now, but also into the future when we can travel more, it just made sense for us to do it that way.
Yeah. So let's talk about breastfeeding, because I know you had mentioned it. Because you are in Australia and you've gone to Thailand and all these other places. In North America, people still shame moms who breastfeed in public. Did that happen in Thailand? Did it happen in Australia? Has anybody made comments while you're breastfeeding out in public?
No one's made comments. I think the biggest problem has just been internal. It's just been with myself being like, oh, someone's going to say something or someone's going to give me a weird look or whatever. And then I just like catch myself and I have to think and be like, this is the issue. If I'm not doing that, but I'm like comfortable to breastfeed wherever she needs to breastfeed, like, she needs to eat. But society has like sexualized it and made it not normal. And by people like me who just breastfeed wherever, it makes it a little more normal, I think, for other mums who then see it and they're like, oh, okay, so you can just kind of do whatever. Obviously, like, in the beginning, I really needed to have like my own private space because I was just trying to figure it out and I didn't want people to help me or whatever. I just wanted to like take the time to learn with Aurora how to do it. So like in the first few weeks, But yeah, I haven't had anyone say anything. And in Thailand, even like, you know, I feel like Thailand is actually more, they're just better with kids in general. Like they're just so family oriented, and they're so about the community. And we were living in this local neighborhood, and Jesse and I would walk outside with Aurora, and we'd be going to breakfast, and they just like clap at us because like, no one speaks English. We don't speak Thai. They just clap at us until we hand them the baby, and then they'd be like, you go get breakfast. And we'll walk down the street, like out of sight, and we come back and she's in like the next neighbor's house at the top with playing with the kids or something like that. And then, so like, I think that a lot of it was perceived. I was like stressed out that someone would say something or would give me a certain look or whatever, but no one's ever said anything. And I think now that she's like 15 months today, if someone did say something now, I'd probably tell them to shut up and be like, you're the problem and you need to move on with your life. If you're concerned about what I'm doing with my child and keeping her happy and calm, because I'm sure you would prefer me breastfeed her than have her screaming in your face right now.
Totally. Yeah. And so you guys, you, Jessie, and Aurora must be a really tight family unit because you guys have been exploring the world together ever since she was born. And obviously you and Jessie had these plans. But so you said you're in Darwin and your parents live there, right?
Yeah, we're in like the downstairs flat kind of area of my parents' place at the moment.
Okay. So then there's a lot of chance for like babysitting, and you and Jessie can still have like date nights and stuff like that.
Kind of. Yes and no. We actually have a babysitter because we share the kitchen with my parents. So my parents are seeing the baby all the time as it is. And they kind of just, I'd only left home. Well, I guess I'd left home like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So, and my mum, my brothers are significantly older. So my parents have been parenting for like 30 plus years, 35 years. And they suddenly got their like time to be alone, and they were back in Australia, and because they'd been living in Singapore and Fiji before that, working and whatnot. So they just come to Darwin to have like this nice little like tropical romantic time to just them, and then suddenly we show up and now we're here. Yeah. So yeah, we actually ended up getting a babysitter, and it's been the best, just for us to go get a chance to go out and do things just us. Like we do a lot of things with Aurora anyway. We've taken her to a lot of events, that we took her to a music festival like a few months ago, which I mean, eventually we had to leave because I was like, everyone's just getting way too drunk here, and this is probably not safe. Even though she's in the carrier and whatnot, it's just like, it's not going to be good. But yeah, like my parents do babysit occasionally, but it's not super often because they are seeing her throughout the day and every night and things like that anyway. So yeah.
First of all, kudos for taking your baby to a festival. I wish I was that brave to have done that.
Yeah.
I literally was just afraid for anything. And the thing is, I wasn't super adventurous when I first became a mom. I was always like, I need, Jaden's dad to come with me. Like I wasn't, I just, even going to play places, like I never took him by myself because I was just fearful, like I couldn't handle it until I actually became a single mom, which before he turned 2 is I learned how to be more independent, and I had so much fun with him. So while you guys are at date night, do you guys talk about Aurora all the time? Like if it's just you and Jessie, or do you more so focus on just the two of you guys and you slightly talk about Aurora, or does it just end up like you guys talk about Aurora?
I think actually we spend a lot of our time talking about the business, because we also, aside from how to travel with kids, we run a digital agency here called We Are Creatives. And so we talk a lot about clients and business stuff, probably more than we'd like to. It just kind of happens, especially when you're an entrepreneur and just like doing your own thing and you're setting your own hours, and we're doing it together as well. We do like come back to that. And I find anytime that I'm like apart from her and Jessie even for a long period of time, I find myself, I'm just like scrolling through pictures of her on my phone and videos. And it's just like, you're with them all the time and you're like, I just need a minute. And then you get anything longer than like 3 hours. And I'm like, okay, like, where are they? Are they coming back?
Yeah.
When am I going to see them again? Is everything okay? Is she having a meltdown? Is Jessie all right? So I think just from us being together all the time, we definitely do talk about Aurora and we talk about things like that. But I think our main focus at the moment in this season of life is trying to build out the business and figure out what we want for our future and what we want it to look like, because it is changing as Aurora gets older and we see like what we want, like what she's liking and what she's not liking and things like that. So I think it's kind of well-rounded, but actually more heavily focused on business, which we're trying to move past. But it seems to take up a lot of time.
Yeah. So just like us, I'm sure a lot of people watching or a lot of people who know you are like, wow, you are living the life. But what they don't see probably is the downside. So what kind of struggles do you and Jessie go through when it comes to balancing parenthood and trying to run your own successful business?
I think the hardest thing is just like time. And this is like with every parent, I'm pretty sure it goes through this. Just how do I find the time to do everything? I think the answer is that you can't, but you just kind of have to do what you can and understand that things will be out of balance sometimes, and that's okay. So for us, we try to have this schedule where on like Mondays, Jessie will take the baby and I will get a big chunk of work done. And then on Tuesdays, Jessie gets to do a big chunk of work. But we also want to make sure that that if Jessie has stuff that he needs to do for clients and it has to be done on a Monday, that he gets some time in as well. So we tried having we just kind of see how it goes. Like at the moment, there's a bunch of websites that need to be developed. So Jessie is working on those. And for the last few weeks, it's just been me pretty much with the baby pretty full time. So I've been trying to get up early before her now that she's a bit more predictable with her sleep, and get some work done in the mornings, sometimes working in the evenings. And we try to also take a family day every week, usually on Wednesdays. We try to do something fun for her. So that's like today. So Jessie's gone with her to the boat to do the boating and everything. I would like to be there, but I'm taking this as a work day because I haven't been able to do too much lately. But when I have a lot of video projects going on, Jessie will take the baby. So it's been really tough to stick with that schedule of like one day here, one day here, one day here, when, just the nature of a startup, it's very like volatile and up and down. And so sometimes we have a whole lot of website projects to do and sometimes we have a whole lot of video projects to do. So it depends on how the work is as to who's doing what and when. And we just try to communicate that and be flexible. But I think that, I think that the time management has just, when you know that you're going to have uninterrupted time, like I feel like I'm 4 times more productive. I can get so much done in 2 hours if I know that I'm not going to be interrupted. I'm not wasting brain space thinking about whether I'm going to be interrupted or, I need to go and do the washing, or I need to do this, or I need to make the bed, or I need to make lunch or anything like that. If I know that I have 2 hours to just get as much stuff done as I can, then I can get a lot done. Whereas if you get like a bunch of like 15 minutes here and there, you just don't sit down and get into the same headspace and you're just not as productive. So I think for parents that are trying to work from home, even I know a lot of people are still working from home. So working from home, or you've got kids, or you've got your own business, or whatever it is, I think just trying to find someone to watch the child or the children for a block of time rather than trying to give yourself a little bit of time here and there. Whether that's, you can only do it when they're sleeping, so it's like in the morning or when they're napping or in the evening or something like that. Or if you can find someone, like sometimes we pass her off to my mum, like once every 2 weeks we pass her off to my mum for 3 or 4 hours so we can work together on business stuff. And then other times, obviously, we have a babysitter as well. So I think just like getting some quality time in it gives you the ability to get so much more done that way.
Yeah. And I know that from previous posts that you've had, you do have clients that are out of country and they're in different time zones, and you obviously have to have some meetings with them because you just do. How do you work around that? Like, what time do you, like, I just feel like you're spread out too thinly and you have a toddler. how do you manage that? And what's your day to day like when you actually have client meetings?
Yeah, so I don't do that work anymore. I know I posted on my stories on Instagram because it was just getting ridiculous. Where I had this one client that was not very forgiving of my circumstance, the fact that I'm in Australia, and the fact that I have at the time I had like a 6 month old or something like that, and she was up all the time, and it was a really tough time where she was up like every hour of the night kind of thing, and this client was like, I can only do a meeting at this time. And so it was like 4:30 in the morning for me that I was waking up. And then half the time she wouldn't even make the meeting. And that was pretty awful. But nowadays I just try I'm okay to wake up a little early if someone needs that in Canada, but I only have a couple clients in Canada now. So if they need to have a call, I just try to do it in their afternoon, which is like an early morning for me. And that works for me because I'm happy to wake up early and do it. I'd rather do that than try and stay up late and be working into the evening, because I like to try and have a bit of time to just kind of relax. Otherwise, I have trouble falling asleep. So, yeah, I think that I was definitely spread too thinly, and especially with um, the rate that I was on at the time, it just wasn't going to be sustainable, which is why we kind of stopped doing that type of work and moved more towards clients that are here, because we're able to charge a more fair price for the work that we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's a bit easier because obviously people are in our time zone, but we're talking to friends and family all the time that are in Canada anyway. So we just, you just find there's different times of the day. So early morning for me is a late afternoon there, and as long as my clients are able to do that, then it kind of works out okay for us.
Yeah. So let's talk about your blog, How to Travel with Kids. What can we expect from your blog? Because obviously the title, it says a lot in itself, but what kind of topics do you talk about? And especially now with COVID and everyone on a travel ban, like what can we expect from your blog?
Yeah, so initially I was planning to kind of just showcase our family and literally how we do it. I think the passion behind it comes from just knowing that so many parents and so many people, the people that were concerned about us traveling with Aurora are the people who aren't traveling with their kids, and they're perpetuating that cycle, and the media as well, and social media of, if you travel with a baby, or especially like I know toddlers are a big one. You travel with a toddler, it's going to be awful and you're going to have a terrible time. So you just shouldn't do it. You should just wait until the kids are like 10 because they're not going to remember it, or whatever it is. And then people just don't travel. And I think that it's like, one, it's such a perfect learning experience for yourself and for the kids. And two, like if they're going to have a meltdown, they might as well be having a meltdown while you get to like look out over, the Thai islands than when you're sitting in the snow and it's like horrible. So I think that, that was like the initial focus. Obviously with COVID, things are a little different, but now we're just kind of exploring a lot more locally. So it's a bit more Darwin focused at the moment. We've got a trip next weekend out to a few of the national parks in the Northern Territory. And then next month, we're actually going to Cairns, which is a pretty popular destination. It's interstate. So we're doing that. I think they're announcing, hopefully, a trans-Tasman travel bubble between Australia and New Zealand towards the middle of the year. So if that gets announced and all goes ahead, then we can hopefully do a bit of that travel. But Australians, we're one of the only countries at the moment. We are actually, Aurora and I as citizens are not allowed to leave unless we have an exemption. So even if we wanted to fly somewhere to a country that was allowing people, we're not allowed to go. So I think with How to Travel with Kids, I'm just planning on creating more resources and educating and showing parents what it's actually like taking them along with our experience, but then also creating some guides for places that are a bit more local at the moment, and then into the future, just, some more international travel as it starts to open up, and just tips around ways that you can make it an enjoyable experience for everyone.
So I know that you guys haven't done international. So what tips and advice could you give parents? Like Jessie literally took Aurora on a boat. Like, what are things that parents should prepare when they're going to, like a day trip or even like a staycation? What are tips that you could give parents? Like, hey, here's the steps to take it just to everything's not going to be everything's not going to go perfectly, but what are things that could be less stressful when you're trying to plan a day out or a staycation?
Yeah. So I think that the biggest thing that happens is people just try to bring everything and plan for the worst, when really, if you're going to a new place, I find, at least at this age, that Aurora is just like so interested in the place that she's going. So we actually don't usually bring very many toys or anything like that. We recently were house sitting for one of our friends here in Darwin for the past 3 weeks. And so obviously we were in a new place. We brought a couple of her toys like that she got from Christmas. But I think that for like road trips or like on the boat and things like that, make sure that they're safe, obviously. So like she has a life jacket that she's wearing right now, I hope. Yeah, so like she's safe, as long as she's safe. With toddlers, I would bring snacks, because as long as she's eating, she can't be crying. And I find that with well, not quite yet, but I think as she gets older, I would recommend more stops, because, you know, she wants to get out and explore, and bringing the kids along for the journey. So as she gets older, we plan to be traveling more and being like giving her the opportunity to plan part of a trip, to research it, to tell us what we're going to do, to book, like to plan our itinerary, to help us book it and things like that. And just really including her, because I think that that's how kids learn best, is they're really hands-on. They want to be doing what you're doing. They're interested. They're keen to learn. So I think that's the best way to do it. For a newborn, I think less stops is almost better, because every time you take them out of the car and put them back in the car, it's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
But just like kids don't need as much as we think that they do. And they're so excited about everything that's going on around them, that when we're doing like a staycation or on a road trip or things like that, as long as Aurora has food and water and she's been changed recently and she's not like tired, like she's pretty fine. It's very rare that we are out traveling that she's going to get bored. She'll get bored at home. If we keep her in this room for a long time, she'll scream and scream,
sure.
and then we'll take her outside and she's fine. So yeah, I just think like have certain things that are good for like actual transiting. So like we have like some Bluetooth headphones that we give her, and she will sit there for like half an hour just listening to like songs, and it's like silent. And we're like, do we even have a child? And that's great. And that works really well sometimes. And then like, you know, I know some parents, they do like screens and things like that. And that can be a really good way to get through the transiting time, especially if your kids aren't used to screens or something like that. It can be a really exciting thing if they're going on a plane for the first time. You know, if they're old enough, you can explain to them what's going on. You can be like, oh, now we're going to do the safety demonstration. Now we're taking off. Now we're doing this. Can you see down below, you know, there's the ground and there's this and whatever, and just including them. Yeah. And then for the toddlers, I think it's just about making sure that their basic needs are met, because once their basic needs are met, they don't have that reason. I don't think kids get cranky the way that like adults get cranky. Like sure, sometimes they wake up and they just didn't sleep for long enough and they're a bit grumpy, but that's because they're tired. It's not, I don't think kids wake up and they're just like, oh, I'm sad today. Like kids are generally pretty happy as long as they are fed and whatever. So I think that, yeah, just letting them get out and explore and be part of it makes things a lot easier.
Yeah. So actually, we were supposed to take my daughter for her 4th birthday to Disneyland. And somebody had told me, my advice is you should take them later because they're not going to remember. And then I read something that said, telling someone that is like saying, don't read a book to a child because they don't understand it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just all different. So.
Yeah. So Jax. I don't know why. It's just because you guys are both Jax and Jessie. So, my question for you is, when you are feeling overwhelmed and, you know, you're thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Like, has that ever happened to you? And 2, what was the worst situation where you're like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing? Like, oh my God.
Yeah, that definitely happens to me like pretty much on a daily basis.
Okay.
So normal mom
Okay,
life.
it's a
Yeah.
normal mom thing.
Yeah. Actually, the last few weeks have probably been the hardest. Like in some regards, like obviously, so like when I was about 3 months postpartum, when Aurora was 3 months old, we had a lot of breastfeeding issues. I got like bout after bout of mastitis, and we were in Thailand, and you know, anyone who's had mastitis knows it's incredibly painful and horrible to deal with, and you have to keep breastfeeding to try and get rid of it. And so that was horrible. And then at about 5 months, that was when Aurora was sleeping the worst, and so I was just incredibly tired. And then when she was about 8 months, she was starting to walk, like cruise around and hold on to things, but she was just standing, and then she'd just like let go and fall backwards and hit her head. So I could not let her go anywhere without me being directly behind her. So that was really hard. So they've all been different hard times for different reasons. But in the last few weeks, it's been the first time where Jessie has been working full time, pretty much, or over full time. He's been doing 12-hour days to try and get all of this stuff done. And I've had to be basically full-time mum, and anything that I'm doing, I have to get done when Aurora is asleep, because when she's awake, I need to be playing with her. And that has been, it's been really hard. And there were many days where I was just like, what am I going to do? I'm like going to lose my mind. I don't know how parents, like how people are stay-at-home moms without like help. And I also don't know how people are single parents. Like that is just insane to me, because I'm just like out here with this crazy demon child that's like running around, and I'm like, don't go into that and don't go into that. I think that I definitely like had that moment with that lately. And I think how I just kind of got through that was to just like take a second and be like, okay, she's probably being crazy because she hasn't been outside, or like try and think about what's going on for her and how I can fix that. Because when I can fix that for her, that gives me a second to be able to fix things for me. And I'm also, by being stressed and flustered, I'm not helping her. So just like getting outside or going for a bath or like just changing the situation has definitely helped. And then also I think people underestimate the power of creating a safe space for your child. So having a space where they can go absolutely everywhere. We don't really exactly have that, but we have a couple of spaces where pretty much anything she can go into. And that's been really good, because then you don't have to feel like you're constantly on top of them, and you don't have to feel like you're chasing them around and making sure that they're not going to like injure themselves or something like that. This is especially relevant for toddlers, and it kind of helps you to take a second and breathe and be like, it's okay. But honestly, just like lay on the floor and just like take a second. Because the kid is going to be fine. Like
Yes.
She's not in danger. And if she's screaming, as long as she's like, just, as long as it's just like her having some big feelings, she's going to be okay if I just like take a second to calm down. It's actually better for me to take a second to calm down and then come to her calm than it is for me to try and rush over and help when I'm all frantic and everything. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, I definitely have that feeling like every single day, at least once.
That is super awesome, because I don't think I've ever thought about creating a safe space for when I was a mom with Jaden. Giselle, did you ever create a safe space so where you're like, I'm gonna put her in that room and she'll be fine?
Yeah, I kind of had to, and because we were living at my mom's house, so it wasn't very baby friendly everywhere when she was first born. But yeah, just taking them to a safe space to kind of just let out their big feelings, I totally am on board for, because that happens a lot in my house. So
Perfect. So Jax, I just want to say thank you so much. It is super awesome to like learn new things. I mean, I have a 15-year-old, but I'm always constantly learning new things. So just in case if I ever have a baby, who knows, that I have learned all these things from these new moms and like new hacks and tips.
yeah.
So again, we are almost out of time, but before we go, I want to ask you, from everything that you and Jessie are doing right now with Aurora and just as a traveling family, what do you hope that Aurora learns from everything you guys are doing, and what do you hope to teach her?
I think the biggest thing for us is to just have her be really accepting and open to new ideas and new cultures and new people. I think that especially over the last year, that's been something that's come up a lot with society and, with like the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that. I think that there's a big change happening, and we want her to be aware of what's going on. I want her to be really, I think that in traveling, it's hard for someone to be a worldly traveler and still be very closed-minded, because you experience things, you see people, and you realize that we're all different, but we're all the same. And I just want her to, in having the opportunity to travel, to be able to make friends and, start conversations with people and have the confidence to look after herself and be independent. And, I think that's kind of what we're striving for with having a more alternative lifestyle, just to give her the confidence to do what she wants to do with her life and just be accepting of others.
Mm-hmm. Well, you guys started her at 6 weeks old, so I have no doubt in my mind that she's going to be the most adaptable and I guess woke baby out there. So thank you again, Jax. And we cannot wait, just like you and everybody else probably, for the restrictions to go and the borders to open up. So we're all waiting and wishing for that warm beach weather, but you already have that. So, so thank you so much. And then to all our followers, thank you so much again. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our videos on YouTube, and just so you don't miss out on all our cool stuff. So remember to wear your mask, wash your hands, and most importantly, love yourself even on the hardest days.
Oh, and one more thing, sorry, before you say bye, don't forget to check out all of Jax's handles.
Oh, yes.
Jax, we're just going to let you tell, because I know you guys have a couple, or any of our listeners, because we know we have some Australian listeners, because I'm looking at those analytics. I know you guys are listening, so shout out to all of the ham fam out in Australia, because I see you guys. So Jax, let them know what your handles are so they can follow you, and if anyone's looking for tips and hacks.
Yeah, definitely. So the website is howtotravelwithkids.com.au for the Canadian people. And it's How to Travel WK on all the social medias. And then our mine and Jessie's digital agency is We Are Creatives Darwin, which you can find at wearecreatives.com.au or wearecreatives.au and everything else.
Awesome.
Perfect.
So we're
Thank
also
you.
going to link, put that in the episode notes. So you guys have a quick link to that. And so bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Jax.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thanks.